Okay, so this is another video off of tips on improving your animations. This one's involving parallax. One of the ways of improving your parallax is using a camera with depth of field turned on, lots of depth of space, like things spread out in Z space, very far away from one another. And texture is a big one. Texture can be a very nice subtle detail to make your animations a lot more rich. So let me show you what I did here real quick. I have one shape layer and I duplicated, so there's two of them. This is the original shape layer. Oops, wrong one, sorry about that. That's for something later on in here. All right, I had a shape layer that had a gradient on it. All right, this is what it looked like. I duplicated, so it's the exact same shape and the exact same position. So I'm going to use this as an alpha matte, which we'll get to in a moment. So for this one column that I wanted to create, I just did CC simple wire removal to help get this look real fast of a column without having to do anything in 3D. So, there's my thickness, 45.7. There's the slope. I only displaced it horizontally, and I duplicated it and stepped them all out 50 pixels away from one another so that they're uniform. Okay? So that's how I got this basic look. I'm like, all right, that's looking all right. Got my gradient and this. It's pretty nice. Then I grabbed a texture, a photo texture from online. There's my shape underneath it. And I could position this however I want, based upon how much texture I want. So I'm going to actually, oops, don't want that. I press P for position. I'm going to slide this texture to about, let's try there. Nah, I like where it was originally. That shows some good interest. Okay, so this is where it's lining up with my pillar. And this is the shape layer that I had duplicated. So remember, for masks, you put the mask over top of your face. So this is the shape I want. It's over top of my image on the image layer for track matte. Now remember, if you're not seeing the track matte, switches and modes down here. See, these are my switches. Like I said, 3D, motion blur. I said the name of that in the other video. I don't remember off the top of my head. Collapse transformations. So here's my modes, my blending modes, and my track matte, which is what I wanted. So for the layer with the texture under track matte, I just choose alpha matte. Now I have the texture over just my pillar. So if I wanted to, I could get all three of these layers, right click, pre-compose, I'll call this pillar, move all attributes into a new composition, and there's my first pillar. So if I duplicate this in the timeline, everything will stay exactly the same. If I duplicate it up in the project panel, this is where I can change it. So I'm going to duplicate it here. I've got pillar 1, now I've got pillar 2. So when I open up pillar 2, if I go to my texture, now if I move it like such, I'm going to have a different looking texture than on the first one. So when I put this into my timeline, I just dragged it from here. Now I'm going to move it sideways. Now the pillars look different. I'll spread them apart. And I'm going to duplicate pillar 2 in my project panel. Now I've got pillar 3. When I open up pillar 3, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to move my texture. Let's try going the other way for this. Let's do that. All right, sure. I'm going to close that. 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 This is just so I can work more easily, save myself some time. I'm done with the first part of this, so we're just in Parallax. I'm going to put this down in my timeline, and I'm going to move it apart. Move it over, I mean. So I have that one shape, and all I did was move around the texture, and now I've got 3 different looking pillars. So I'm going to click my toggle switches and modes. make those 3D. Set if I add a camera, so go Layer, New, Camera. I'm going to put depth of field on. Where is that at? They keep moving stuff, which is awesome. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to click OK. I'm going to turn it on down here. Camera options, depth of field, on. So I got there by twirling down the black arrow next to camera, then camera options. There's my depth of field. And I can adjust it here, which I will do later on. Okay. So let's see what's going on here. I'm going to spread these out in Z space just for the fun of it. So I'm hitting P on all three of them. They're all on the 0 axis. Right there. So it's X side to side, Y up and down, Z forward and backward from the camera. So that's why I'm going to be changing the Z. Let's see if I move. Okay, so that's moving it backwards. So I'm going to make this 2500. I'm going to make this 900. And I'm going to keep this first one where it was. Now, why am I not seeing? Okay, there it is. Okay. Now you can see the 3 different levels. I'm going to add some people in. These are transparent. I'm going to reduce my resolution so I can work faster. There's my person. We'll put it custom. My 20 by 20, so I'm going to move a lot faster. Oh, here we go. My renderer up here at the top was set to Cinema 4D. I'm going to do Classic. Classic 3D. Yeah, now we're going to go flying because the other one will take up quite a lot of space and time. All right, so looks like it was the depth of field that was doing it from when I made it 3D. So I just changed that. I turned it off, but I'm going to put it back on when I'm ready. So I'm going to hit P. Okay. Now this was 2700. Back it goes. This was 900. Back that goes. This one I'm going to put it minus 1000 and move it over. So this is ahead of my person. All right, I'm going to move him down just so that he's on the screen. Oops, sorry, that's Z. Okay, so that's one way of adding texture. I'm going to show you another one in a second. So I'm going to put my camera blur back on. Change my focus distance. The aperture will also adjust that as well. And the blur level, I'm going to knock that down to, let's try 40. Okay, now we're still seeing some more stuff, which is good. Is the higher number the... Yep. So the higher the aperture number, the more shallow the depth of field. So if I use a smaller aperture number, and I'm going to blur this a little bit less. Now another way of getting a nice image, oh, that's not enough. Well, you can see how it's getting much more blurry in the background there. If you change your iris shape, you'll get a smoother, nicer bokeh as well. You'll slow down your render, but it's going to look overall nicer, which is what you want to look for. Okay, so as I move my camera around, let me put one more person in the scene. Who do we got here? We got that. Okay, this guy. We'll add you to the scene as well. Now this guy I'm going to put further back. Oop, double clicked on by accident. Okay, so him, I'll put him at 3500. Oh, he's got to be 3D first. All right, here we go. And I'll move him over to here. Okay, so if I move my camera around, here's my camera tool. If I press C, it'll change it. This is the overall orbiting, which you can do if you feel like it. See, everything changes. It's perspective because it's spread out in 3D in Z space. So this one will rotate everything around. The orbit is for if I hold down Shift, I'm going to orbit around either that way. That's if you want to do like a 3D revolve around, or up and down, like such. I'm going to hit undo. This one is pan side to side, or up and down by holding down Shift. Set side to side. I'm going to speed this up just so it's faster. And there's my up and down. Let me hit undo. And then last but not least, this one is for zoom in, zoom out. So if I put everything back down here to the bottom, all right, I'm going to change my angle a little bit. Let's do this. And then the less keyframes you have for your camera, the better. You'll get a smoother animation. Plus, you're going to want to ease those as well. I'm just going to click all these. Let's go forward a few seconds. Let's see what happens if I zoom in. Will that change any of it? Oh, that's the position. Okay, that's the overall position. It's a little too much. Okay, let's do this. So you can see the camera moving over time and the scene moving. Select all the keyframes I'm using. If I hit F9, okay, I lost the last half of that tutorial. Just stopped recording. So another way to improve parallax is with lights. Adding lights. One of the key things for that, I'm going to lower my resolution just so I can move faster. The important thing when you add lights, I did spotlight for here. Under light options, you want it to cast a shadow. So I'm going to add another light to the scene just so you can see me do it. So I go layer, new, light, cast shadows right here. That's the important part right there. That's what you want. You change your settings to whatever you want. I'm going to add this over here. Fine. Go move it over here. Let's put it back there. Sure. Okay. So to make sure everything has turned shadows on for your 3D layers, that would be, I select the layer I want, go to Material Options, Cast Shadows On right there. So to summarize, best ways to improve parallax are with texture, depth of field, adding lights. Now, I'm going to show you one more way of adding texture. If you don't want to use photo textures and blending modes, that's fine. You'll get a better result. This is a shape layer I have right here. So I'm going to hide everything else. I'm going to solo it. I'm going to click the solo button right there. There's a quarter resolution so we can see a little bit better. Let's try full. Okay. For this layer, it's a shape layer. I put a gradient ramp on. Let me turn this off 3D so it'll move faster. Okay. So here's my gradient. Then I added turbulent noise. And there's my noise. You can experiment with it to get whatever look you want. I'm going to change that back. So it's your fractal type and your noise type will achieve the type of noise you want, plus contrast and brightness. Let me zoom in. All right there. Then the next effect I added was posterize, and that's going to knock down the number of levels in the overall tone. I changed it to 5, and then I put a tritone on it. If I had this at 3, it'd show a lot less levels. Would go black, white, and then 50% gray. I'm going to move my gradient. You see how it's already changing this. Let's change the end to here. Let's move it down further. So I said 5. And like I said, it's all just experimenting with the different types of looks you want. I'll do rocky. Yeah. So it's moving your gradient position points for the start and the end. If you want radial or linear, it's going to change the complete look of it as well. See how that changes it right there off the bat. Then on your turbulent noise, your fractal type, your noise type, your contrast and your brightness, as well as the scale of it. That. Then posterizing, the number of levels you want, and your tritone. You could set whatever colors you want for your midtones, your highlights, how much you want to blend it, or not blend it at all if you want. That's all up to you. But that's one way, like I said, to add texture to shape layers without using photos. Gradient ramp, turbulent noise, posterize, and tritone. So it's all about playing with your settings. You start, your end, fractal noise, and fractal type, noise type, brightness, contrast, your scale, number of steps you have posterized, and the tritone color you would like to have if you want any color at all.